and it's like these conversations will dictate how NFTs interact with our real life in 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 6 years.
How far away are we? And I'll put this in the room from, because I still feel like we're still very early. I think people that have been in crypto feel like we're in the late stages, but for the mass majority, this is something that's very new, very fresh, very much on the mind. As Fred said, when the New York Times starts writing about this, it's going to go full steam. But when do you guys see it going full steam? What is it going to take for people to understand or adopt this at a higher level? Or is this something that remains something part of a generation, of a culture? And Trevor, I think you probably got some good insight on that.
Oh, God, I probably have a narrow point of view, but I think, the onboarding stuff, the kind of basics, the Web3 wallets, or if anyone wants to interface with kind of NFTs on their browser, for the most part, outside of the most part, they need to have a wallet. One of them, MetaMask, I think is quite clumsy. They're iterating quickly, but it's still a ton of friction. I think there's still a lot of challenges, and every day people come to FWB, our tokenized community, and they are sent or Uniswap, FWB into their wallet. They don't see it in MetaMask, and they kind of like Google for a second. So the basics of this stuff are still coming together. But I think what you're seeing right now is a really this. You see a deep desire for creators to want to sell their works directly to fans, and fans that want to own it. And I think that is going to basically inspire a lot of people to keep building solutions, and we're going to get there probably sooner than we think.
I think also, to add on to that, I think that it's going to happen with the accessible consumer part. And I think that a lot of people will start onboarding with music as a major motivator. I think that's going to be when it becomes more and more standard practice. And I feel like the music and art collaboration is going to open the beginning of the larger collaborations of fine art, film, media, storytelling, fashion. And that's the very, very beginning of that next phase that is going to be so much bigger, where NFT represents contracts, applications, future television shows. It's the beginning of a huge thing. So even though it's going to become standard, I think with music art collaboration, I feel the real stuff is going to happen even later, but it's constantly happening at the same time.
Yeah.
I have
going on with the real stuff, right? Virgil, I think going to the topic of legitimization, you are quite possibly the person in this room who is best suited to speak on breaking through and the sort of, these your first Louis Vuitton show inspired by Dorothy and Oz, and just finding the end of the rainbow. What do you think is going to be that moment for NFTs that makes it, a little bit more real and, expands it into the canon of this sort of crossover area, this genre where that you specialize in the sense that you're taking Braun with, this recently announced long-term partnership, and you're elevating it into this larger conversation, but you're also mixing it with things like Houston slab culture and custom cars, and that for people who are unaware about the 3% rule of the minimum amount of changing something, right, to make it a new thing. What's going to be that moment, right? What's going to be that you arriving at Louis Vuitton moment of NFTs, do you think?
Well, this is for the question that I pose a lot in conversations these days is it's underground versus the overground. And I think, one of the most compelling things about the NFT space is there's an underground to it. There's been people who dedicated their time, resource, passion to building this platform, and all of a sudden it's popped, into top of mind conversation. So there's going to be a struggle there, and we're probably I would say 72 hours away probably from a mega pop star announcing they're going to do something on the space. That it just feels like that.
Next month.
Yeah, next month, probably tomorrow.
Weeks.
I
can tell you
next
weeks.
month. Not gonna lie.
So my question to the room is, Gian, I like where you're going because I have a philosophy on it, but it's a precursor to that is asking those who have been on this platform and developing it. It's the same as streetwear, right? There were kids, whether Fairfax or Orchard Street, that cultivated this, and then all of a sudden it pops. But we've learned to sort of adapt. And then that's where my Louis Vuitton moment like flew out of that sort of tension years. But what's that to those that are like been speaking about NFTs for over 2 years or whatever? Do you feel like the moment has already, you can see the wave crashing of this like underground culture becoming?
Yo, Virgil, we have someone in the room who I would love the mods to bring up on stage, the curator of the Museum of Crypto Art. He's been collecting crypto art for many years and was the first purchaser of Beeples on Nifty Gateway. He's actually in the audience. His name is Pablo. Would be really cool to get his perspective because he's been talking about this for a really long time.
Let's get his hand up in a second.
But you know,
apologies. Just put your hand up and we'll bring you in right now and we'll get to that.
Just to what Gian is pointing out is like when I started in fashion, you know, I didn't look like the prototype. I didn't speak or operate. You know, I came in with a whole different set of, you know, underground cultural experiences, and I worked my way to sort of like speaking and bringing a new language, and ultimately that set me the way through. And I think when I hear about the community that exists within crypto art or within, you know, this new form of content, because I think, you know, the word art is tripping a lot of things, tripping a lot of like old system radars off. It's whoever has a grasp on the sort of digital, physical, you know, 40-year-old to 14-year-old is going to make a compelling story. You know, like that's how a Supreme bursts out of streetwear or something. So that's sort of just my general thoughts. It's going to take someone who knows the underground, knows the culture that exists, but also is willing to break a rule or two to cement something new.